Good morning to all of you and welcome to our webinar that deals with using social media as a scholar, more specifically as a media scholar. Today we will be listening to experts of different social media, and this will be a drop-in webinar, which means that you can join us at any time, you can leave us at any time, you can come back at any time, and you can just pick up the things that are the most important to you. My name is Maarit Jaakkola, and I'm a co-director of Nordicom and editor-in-chief of NordMedia Network. Nordicom is a center for media research, for Nordic media research at the University of Gothenburg in Sweden, and we are working with the third assignment of the university. That means communication between the academy and society, and social media is a very important tool in this respect, and we wanted to address it in this type of a specific webinar today. This is the first of its kind. We are basically exploring a new format, and if it turns out that drop-in webinars seem interesting and relevant to you, we may be able to organize these kinds of webinars in future as well. So please get back to us after this webinar and tell us about what you thought about it. And today we have made a selection of social media platforms. At first we were talking about only focusing on scholarly platforms or on so-called general social media tools and platforms. Social media is a very broad umbrella term for different kinds of forms of communication, and now we decided to take both scholarly platforms such as Academia Edu and ResearchGate, ORCID, Mendeley, Publons. There are different options with slightly different functions. So we chose Academia Edu and Publons for you, but today I have to, unfortunately, I have to say, inform you that Academia Edu is not present today, so we'll start, and then Google Scholar, of course, and then we'll start with Google Scholar, and Publons will be included. But then we also have some general multi-purpose social media tools in our mix today. And so we have Twitter, Instagram, and Clubhouse. As a scholar, you have to decide upon distinct communication strategies, which platforms to choose, which platforms to prioritize, and how much to be present on them, in which roles, and so on. And these communication strategies we can talk more about in the final discussion. But please leave your questions at any time to the chat box, or then you can ask them in video after the presentations. We'll have a very tight schedule, and because this is a drop-in webinar, we have to stick to it. So please try to keep to the timetable. And I think we'll start with Google Scholar right away. And we have Pekka Mertala, who is assistant professor at the University of Jyväskylä in Finland, who will tell us how to deal with that platform that is usually regarded as a window into a scholar's work, but how to use it in an effective way. So please, Pekka, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Maarit. And first of all, thank you for Nordicom and especially to Maarit for inviting me here. As Marit also already introduced me, my name is Pekka Mertala. I work as an assistant professor of multiliteracies and digital literacies at the Faculty of Education and Psychology in the University of Jyväskylä, Finland. So I have nothing, professionally to do with Google or Google Scholar. So I'm just a devoted and perhaps a bit critical user of that platform. So my topic this morning is how and why to use Google Scholar in order to improve the accessibility of your research publications. And well, Google Scholar is practically, it's not that much of kind of, social networking site. It's a place where you can showcase and your publication. It's a place where people can find your publication, but it doesn't allow you to interact with other scholars that much. So there is not that much about social interaction or social media kind of interaction involved in this presentation. But first of all, what is Google Scholar and why should we care about Google Scholar? To put it in very, very simplistic way, Google Scholar is a kind of a scholar research engine which uses automated software to index research publications, mainly journal articles, but also conference proceedings, and to some extent also books and book chapters and conference presentations, in the forms of slides and so on, and also policy documents and so on, but mainly journal articles across the web. And the two important concepts here I want you to pay attention are that everything is automated, there is no practically human involved, and Google Scholar indexes and searches research documents across the web. So it means that Google Scholar does not only index content that can be found from websites of major publishers like Elsevier or Routledge or Springer or Shades or whatever, or from more minor open access journals and platforms provided by different universities and research institutes, but it searches research documents all across the web. And the searching is done by automated software, which means that what is counted as a research paper, or journal article, or conference proceedings, or whatever, it has nothing to do with the content of the publication. But the software, they are called crawlers, they only search for documents that meet certain technical requirements. And if you upload a document that meets those requirements, then the software identifies it as a research paper, a research output, and indexes it in Google Scholar. So why should we care about whether our papers are indexed in Google Scholar or not? They can be found through various academic search engines and databases like EBSCO and Science Direct and Web of Science and so on and so on. Well, one reason is that Google Scholar has perhaps become the most used scholarly database / search engine during the past few years. So scholars, researchers, they use Google Scholar to check new publications and do scoping reviews and forward citation searches, practically because the interface is much more handier than traditional academic databases. And put it differently, if we want our research to be accessible for our colleagues, for our peers, and for general public also, it is quite vital to have the full text index in Google Scholar. And another thing which I recommend, besides having the papers indexed in Google Scholar, is that you put up your own Google Scholar profile. I don't have enough time to showcase how it is done, but it's practically the same thing as you put up a Google account. So it takes 5 minutes of your time. And one handy feature with having your own Google Scholar profile is that if your colleague or peer comes across a paper of yours which she finds interesting and wishes to seek out whether you have published some other relevant work and types your name in Google Scholar, the first search hit she will see is your profile. And it's a showcase in the picture of the academic superstar et al.'s Google Scholar profile. It's quite easy to locate the most cited and the most relevant publications from the profile. And it's especially important if you happen to have a common name, you know, like John Smith or Jay Smith, and there are dozens of John Smiths doing research. So you will stand up among your people with the same name. So how can you take advantage of Google Scholar? So let's assume that you have published a new paper, which you feel that it's the best paper you have ever put together. And of course, you want to share your masterpiece with the whole world. And as I said earlier, one quite important feature in sharing the paper with the whole world is having it indexed in Google Scholar. So what do you have to do? What does it require from you? By default, it requires you nothing. Because the documents that are published through major publishing companies like Sage and Routledge and etc., and also through different kind of publishing systems that, for example, university-based publishers are using, Digital Commons and Open Journal system. The documents, your articles, are already in a form that the Google Scholar software can identify as a research paper. So if you publish your papers through these kind of channels, you don't have to do anything. The paper will be indexed there. But the full paper, the version of record, will be available for the general public and basically for everybody only if it's published as a cold open access paper. If it is published as an green open access or pay subscription based publication, 99% of people will face a paywall. So okay, the paper is indexed, but the full text is not reachable. So what can we do to get around this obstacle? In advanced level, we can upload our author's accepted manuscript, which is the version in which the content is the very same as in version of record, but it doesn't have the fancy typesetting provided by the publisher. About 90% of the journals allow researchers to upload the author accepted manuscript to university repositories. For example, my university requires us to upload it there immediately. And for example, UCDoc, which my university uses, it's quite simple interface and it takes me 3 minutes about to upload the paper there. However, the problem here is that also the 99% of the journals that allow you to do this also have an embargo time when the author's accepted manuscript can be openly available to the university repository, and the embargo time can be up to 2 years. Okay, if you want to share your paper with the world, immediately, 2 years is not very optimal time frame for doing that. But luckily, we can move to so-called exceptional level. So again, about 99 or 90% of the journals allow you to upload the author's accepted manuscript to some non-commercial preprint or postprint platform. For example, the Social Science Archive, Educational Science Archive, which are two of the platforms I use most common. So you can upload the very same document in the very same form that you upload to university repository to some of these preprint servers. And typically, the technical requirements of these servers are similar with those that the Google Scholar crawlers use. So they can identify and detect your paper from there. And as I said, the journals typically allow you to upload the author's accepted manuscript in which the content is similar. So there is no difference between the content of the version of record and the not so fancy looking postprint that you will upload to these servers. However, there's one problem. Because there are human moderators involved in the process, they check the technical requirements and they also check that you are not violating copyright agreements. So it means that basically you can only upload preprints or postprints in English, written in English. So if you publish in languages other than in English, which, for example, I do frequently, these platforms are no good for my needs. But then we can move to boss level to get around this obstacle. As I said in the beginning of the presentation, Google Scholar does not search research papers only from journal websites or academic repositories or preprint platforms, but all across the web. So what you can do is that you simply upload the papers to your own personal website. What you need to do is that if you don't have a website, you just have to launch one. You can use WordPress or Google Sites. Both are free and quite easy to use web-based design platforms. And actually Google Scholar gives you quite detailed instruction how you can ensure and optimize that the papers that you upload to your personal website will be indexed in Google Scholar. So if you launch a website, what you have to do is that you have a separate page there titled Publications, and then you upload your publications to that page. The most convenient way to do that is that you upload them in PDF files. What you have to take care of is that each file ends with the file format name .pdf. Also, the title of the paper has to be larger than other information, because that is something that the crawler searches for. So use about, if I remember right, they instruct that you have to use around, font size 16 to 23 for the title. Then the name of the authors needs to be placed right under the name of the paper in a bit smaller font, but in a larger font than the actual text of the article. And then there are a few more tips and hints they give you that that you can take care, follow to make sure that Google Scholar crawlers will identify your postprints as research articles. And if you follow these protocols and if everything goes well, your postprints, your author-accepted manuscripts should be indexed and available via Google Scholar within a few days or within a few weeks. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, Pekka. I guess this gave a good overview of the uses of Google Scholar and how to use it. But scholars are often talking about H index and I10 index. Could you tell a bit more about these two indexes that are very visible on your Google Scholar profile page?
Yeah, well, you can use Google Scholar for many things, and one thing is that it counts automatically your H index. And personally, I hate H index. I personally hate every quantified metric that is used in ranking researchers, especially when people are competing over grants or competing over works, jobs and so on. But in case you need to have your H index calculated for some purpose, Google Scholar is a handy platform for that, because it indexes and includes publications that are not indexed in any other databases. So it means that your H index counted by Google Scholar is much bigger than your H index calculated in Web of Science or something like that. And for those reasons, for example, because I publish much in Finnish journals, and Web of Science doesn't recognize those journals, I use Google Scholar as the main platform, and if I have to represent my age index, for example, if I'm applying for a grant or applying for another term in tenure track or so on, because it makes me look better. Even though I hate the metric system, I hate myself when I play the game, but I have children to feed.
I guess you are not alone here, but that was a good reason to use Google Scholar. What are the best alternatives to Google Scholar? If you, out of some reason, don't want to use Google Scholar, what would be the alternatives?
Well, basically, what I recommend people to do is that have your author-accepted manuscripts available for general public. They can be in university repositories or in preprint services or in your personal websites. And if you don't want to put up a Google Scholar profile, that's completely fine. But I think it's important that we do whatever we can to have our papers openly accessible for people. Because there are ways to do that. And even though the contracts with different publishers are not that researcher friendly always, but at least we have the possibility to share those not so fancy typesetted versions of our papers. So there is no reason for us not to do that and take advantage of that promise from the publishers.
Yes, and to promote open science.
Yeah.
You said that it's a requirement from your university to upload the paper once it's accepted, but I think the university practices vary a bit, even in the Nordic countries here. It would be nice to hear from other countries. I guess in Finland it's quite a widely shared practice that you have to upload the papers and make them accessible as soon as possible. But what do you think, Knut? Do you have a feeling how does it work in Norway, for example? Just to compare the practices. I'm asking business.
Norwegian researchers are normally, they're supposed to at least register all the publication in something we'll call Kristin, which is the current, what is the algorithm? It's called Kristin. They register all the publication, and this is the same system where authorities extract data to figure out what departments and what universities publish how much, and calculating publication points, etc., which has to do with the financing. So it's administration is in general more fond of registering everything in Kristin than what the researchers are in the end of the year. And then there is a huge process often led by the libraries and archives at the universities to control and check everything and remove duplicates, because the system also extracts and registers things automatically by itself, but not always. So the researcher is always the final responsible for their own publications, or but also artwork. People working in the arts register their work in art. Art research is not the right term, but it's also supposed to be registered there, including letters to newspapers, participation in TV and radio debates or news, even the documentaries, etc., etc. It's heavily dependent on this Kristin system, and preferred open access, even though that's always a challenge.
Yes, Knut is research officer at Nordicom and working with the platform NordMedia network. So that was why I asked about Norway. And I think these publication registers have really made a difference during the past decade or so, because universities do register all their publications in the university or even national registers. But then, as you say, the open access is still a challenge, how to make scholars to use these open repositories or websites of their own, or then even other commercial services. So I guess if you have any experiences from other countries to share, please tell us how it works. But I guess there are some differences in different countries in the cultures and requirements in promoting open science, open access.
Or just even if there are someone working at Norwegian universities here that wants to comment on my words on Kristin, because I have, to be honest, I've only been working it from the administrative side. So and saying, remember to register. So if somebody who's actually been on the light side, not the dark side of Kristin, please comment on what I said as well.
Yes, please. You can also always leave your questions in the chat box. But I have another question. Registering is one thing, then uploading the pre-prints and other versions of the paper is another thing. Then you said, Pekka, that Google Scholar, it's based on, it's completely automated. But as a user, you can also affect your list of publications that has been tracked somehow. You can merge publications, for example, or you can maybe also add manually some publications if the system has missed some publications. I don't know, you can suggest, or you can add co-authors or something. I'm not really familiar with that system. Could you talk a bit more about how an individual user can affect the list of publications that is shown on the profile page?
Yeah, well, first of all, that requires that you have your own profile, and as Marit said, you can merge different publications. There's, for example, if you have a paper that is published, in a certain journal, and then you have the postprint uploaded to university repository or your personal web page. In some occasions, they appear as two different documents or two different publications because the metadata of the papers might be a bit different. So then it's quite handy that you can merge those papers together in Google Scholar, and then the software treats those two publications as one publication. And then if for some reason your publication has not appeared in Google Scholar, you can enter it manually, but you cannot upload anything there. So you can just type in the name of the paper and so on, and names of the authors, and the paper will be visible in your profile. But then again, you have to upload the postprint somewhere for the Google Scholar to be able to index it. And you can also remove publications that are not your publications, and you can claim publications that are your publications but are put under some other people's profile because you share same surname and same initials or something like that. And it may sound that it's quite laborious, but it's not that laborious actually. When you have done the basic things one time, it's
exactly,
you don't have to learn new things that much.
But what about the quality of the papers? Because I saw that also popular science articles are indexed, not only like peer-reviewed or scientific articles. What's your opinion? Should they also appear in the list of publications, or should we remove them?
Well, my policy is that I try to include everything that I publish in Google Scholar, because Google is the most used search engine, in general, And if I want my, news pieces or opinion pieces to be visible as possible, I think that I have, need to make sure that they are indexed in Google Scholar also, as well as in, Google's general search engine to maximize the accessibility.
Okay, but can you affect your H index and I10 index by manually manipulating your list? Is it like if you are merging publication, then publications, for example, then you can get more publications with over 10.
Yes,
so you can actually affect your index as well. So it's worth checking what is in there. Once you have published your Google Scholar profile, then you should go it through manually and see what there is to be done, right?
Yeah, certainly. And there are quite multiple ways to inflate one's H index, and that is one way to do that. But it's something that probably none of us will ever do. We know better.
Yes, let's not think about the H index too much. And I have already mentioned it twice, so I'm sorry. We thank you, Pekka Mertala, and this was a good quick overview over this platform, and it clearly shows us how important it is to make use of different platforms, different repositories, and think about the publication strategy as a whole, not only one platform. And I think we will come back to this issue later, that social media and social networking sites and communication tools, they are an entity, and you should, when you have come up with your own strategies of communication, you have to think, how do I use this, how do I use this, and how do these interact, these two platforms? And I think that's part of or the way how we should think about these tools and platforms. Thank you, Pekka. Now you can go back to go further to your meeting, and we'll proceed to another platform that's called NordMedia Network, and it's me who's going to present it as well. NordMedia Network is a newly established Nordic platform run by Nordicom. It was launched in 2019 at the NordMedia conference in Malmö. And my colleague Knut Riesnes is also working with this platform. He's the managing editor of the platform and taking care of the day-to-day tasks there, so you can compliment me. But I'll now give a short overview of that platform and how it works, and why you should use it, maybe in addition to Google Scholar. But different platforms have different functions, and the core of this platform is a researcher database. Nordicom wants to make the Nordic research community visible in some ways, because the problem has been that during the biannual NordMedia conferences, the community is a bit scattered around. There is no communication between, not under the umbrella of NordMedia at least. So we wanted to create a common website for the NordMedia conference, and in addition to that, to make the community visible in a form of a researcher database. And the site is based on the principle that researchers can register in the database. You can create a profile. You have a button, create profile here, and you can, when you create your profile, you get registered in the database, and you will be counted as a NordMedia Network member. And at the moment, we have 684 experts, Nordic researchers, also non-Nordic. What we mean by a Nordic media researcher, there are a set of criteria we want to stick to, because this community is for Nordic media researchers. So Nordic means working in the Nordic countries or having some kind of a connection to the Nordic area. You can also be working in other countries beyond the Nordics, but anyway, have a connection. You maybe originate from the Nordic countries, or you are tightly collaborating with the Nordic researchers in your role as a researcher. We also want to include industry experts and other kinds of experts, people working in expert roles, not only the traditional researchers in the core of science. So we want to define it broadly. And media, that's also one question. What is media research? So we want to include media and communication research in a very broad way as well. So also media related research, for example, not only the disciplines media and communication studies, media studies, journalism studies, but also strategic communication, game studies. In the humanities, you have many media related disciplines. If you are working with these kinds of disciplines, you are also welcome. So we want to be as inclusive as possible, but then we want to keep the focus on the words Nordic media and researcher. So we cannot accept everyone, but if there are any questions, we always get back to those who have registered and then ask them to tell about their research, about their Nordicness, or about their media profile, media research profile. And at the present moment, there are also people who don't have that kind of a clear connection, and we are currently going through the database to find out what the connection is. If there's no connection, we are planning to establish an interest group that could be researchers or friends of research following the Nordic research community, but not being researchers or Nordic media researchers themselves. Yes, this said, this database forms the core of this site, and maybe I can search for myself. You can search here according to the country, according to some research areas, and according to the university you are working at. So I found myself here. Every registered user has a profile where you can highlight some ongoing projects of yours and with a link, and highlight some publications that are the most important for you, and then you can have a free description of yourself. And here it's good to mention as many keywords as possible, because if people are searching for a expert on social media, then you will appear in the searches if you have mentioned social media in your description, but otherwise you might not appear in these searches. And then in your profile, you will be asked to leave links to other platforms. So we didn't want to make a publication repository, and we didn't want to overlap with other platforms such as LinkedIn, Twitter, Academia, Google Scholar, Facebook, but instead you can indicate your presence on these platforms within your profile, and then to be found in these different channels. So this is a kind of a meta profile, gathering all your social media presence and highlighting your Nordic profile within this context. And the research areas, they are connected to the structure of the NordMedia conference that has divisions and temporary working groups working on specific domains of media research. And now we are trying to establish some communication and activities between these NordMedia conferences by, for example, launching a webinar series that where the divisions and temporary working groups will create the content. So we will have a webinar series carried out by this by the NordMedia people. At NordMedia Network, when you are registered and you are noticed as a Nordic media researcher, you will get a newsletter from us on a regular basis. Every other week, we will keep you updated about things happening within the Nordic Academy. And we have news, we have a conference calendar of all upcoming conferences that are relevant for the Nordic media researchers. We have a calendar of calls for papers, which means for journal articles and book chapters. And we have a calendar of, or a database of vacant positions, and you can also announce your own the vacant positions or call for papers or upcoming conferences at your own institution here. So you can just get into connection with Knut and we'll take care of that.
It's also possible to use the contribution link on the bottom of the website. Then you get into a form and it asks for everything we want to know. If your event or paper call doesn't fit exactly, just email me or any of us, and we'll figure it out.
Yes. So this is also part of the strategy of making the Nordic media research visible and accessible. And we have found out that there is interest also beyond the Nordics. Scholars, European, international, who want to keep themselves updated about the Nordic activities. So they are also following these our news feed and our calendars quite regularly. And the news feed consists of basically of two parts. We want scholars to write news articles or essays, actually, not news articles, but essays about topical issues in the academy, things that don't usually fit into their research reports or journal articles or chapters, things that are interesting in terms of being a researcher or doing research. And you can always contact me. I'm the person who is taking care of the news feed. So if you are interested in writing an essay based on your own observations in the academy or based on your own research. Then we also have some more journalistic coverage. We have freelancers who are mainly journalism students and freelancer journalists who we regularly ask to write, to make interviews, for example, person interviews with researchers, or do a more journalistic coverage regarding the Nordic Academy. Then we have also collected some resources for you. There are Nordic journals, book publishers, funders, institutions, and educational programs, including bachelor's and master's. There will also be a list of doctoral programs within the media and communication research area available soon, and Nordic associations and networks and open data sources. So this is freely accessible to everyone. And there is the permanent web page for the NordMedia conference. Everything regarding NordMedia conference you will find here. And the last part, collaborations, as we are coordinating different scholarly and non-scholarly networks, they will be found here. And I think the most important part is the webinars. We have a webinar program with regular media related webinars, and we would like to collaborate with you if you are a Nordic media researcher and would like to gain some more visibility for your webinars, or would like to arrange a webinar. So why not do it with NordMedia Network? This is a platform for you. So we are kind of research communication platform, which differs from the previous platform presented, Google Scholar. And if you have any questions, please feel free to address me or Knut But of course, we want to welcome you on this platform. If you are not registered yet, please do it now. It doesn't take a lot of time, and you can always update your profile afterwards. Do you have any questions? No? So then, because it's 1:15, we can go further to our next platform, which is actually not a platform talking about the strategies. We also wanted to include an initiative that has with communication, scholarly communication to do. It's called Helsinki Initiative on Multilingualism in Scholarly Communication, a very timely and welcomed initiative. And we have Janne Pölönen, Secretary General of the Publication Forum at the Federation of Finnish Learned Societies, here to talk a bit more about this initiative and about multilingualism in scholarly communication. Welcome, Janne. The floor or the screen is yours now.
Thank you very much. First of all, for the invitation and for this opportunity to present Helsinki Initiative on Multilingualism in Scholarly Communication. So as mentioned, my name is Janne Pölönen. I work at the Federation of Finnish Learned Societies. The Helsinki Initiative was launched in April 2019 to foster an environment that values multilingual scholarly communication, science communication, and open access to scholarly publications in all languages. And there is indeed, even in the beginning, a strong Nordic connection. As you can see on the top left, there are the original signatories include, in addition to Finnish organizations, also universities Norway. So signatories from 70 countries argue that multilingualism in scholarly communication is an international, not just a national or local concern. So let's look a bit closer. The main aims of the Helsinki Initiative, there are 3 of them, are to first promote multilingual dissemination of research knowledge within and beyond academia. Secondly, to ensure sustainable open access transition of non-profit scholarly publishers who make publishing in different languages possible. And thirdly, to promote language diversity in research assessment and funding system so that the rewards and incentives are not against multilingualism in scholarly communication. In many countries, English is increasingly dominant language of scholarly communication, and it's perfectly okay and needed to communicate in English to international expert audiences. However, research when communicated exclusively in English risks not fully meeting all its missions and responsibilities to that society. A recent study by NRES Network, this is a European network for research evaluation in the social sciences and humanities, and the network was one of the original signatories of the initiative. In this study, we found that more than half of 25,000 social sciences and humanities researchers in 7 European countries actually published peer-reviewed journal articles in more than 1 language. So in the SSH, at least multilingualism is indeed an international publishing pattern. But multilingualism is not relevant only for the SSH. For example, in Finland, more than 70% of not peer-reviewed outputs, including publications for professional and general audiences, are in national languages, both in STEM fields and the SSH. We also know, based on a study of users of articles on the Finnish Journal.fi platform, that open access publications in national languages, in Finland this means Finnish and Swedish, are absolutely vital for reaching important users of research both within and especially beyond academia. In this survey study, a total of 668 users participated, and two largest groups of users were students and researchers, but followed by a sizable group of non-academic users, private citizens, experts, teachers, journalists, civil servants, even some entrepreneurs and politicians. And we found that especially students and users outside academia were very much focused on articles available in Finland's national languages. In non-English speaking countries, such as the Nordic countries, including Finland, national journals and book publishers play a unique role in scholarly communication by making research results available in national languages to all sectors of society. Peer-reviewed journals and books are mainly published in the national languages by small-scale, scholar-led non-profit publishers, such as lend societies or research institutions, while commercial publishers, especially those, the international ones, play a relatively small role. Non-profit publishing typically suffers, however, from small resources, reliance on voluntary work by researchers, and lack of professional editorial and technical support. This means that national language publishers typically face both technical and socio-economic challenges in transitioning to open access publishing, as they would lose income from membership fees or subscriptions that are very much needed to sustain publishing services on a very fragile economy. There are only few solutions to support open access publishing, and one of the main ones is the article processing charges, the APC model. And we know from analyzing DOHA directory that APC is an option mainly for English language journals targeted at international authorship and readership. And moreover, APC constitutes a potential publishing barrier for researchers from less resourceful countries and fields. So for most national language publishers, the main option is Diamond Open Access model, which is free for authors and readers, but means reliance on voluntary work and support from societies, institutions, funders, and sometimes governments. The Helsinki Initiative maintains that it should be a collective responsibility of stakeholders to support this local language publishing ecosystem. Policymakers, evaluators, and funders still tend to think that research of any value to science and society is published in international English language journals, and that international excellence means articles in Web of Science or Scopus indexed journals. Yet these international databases provide a very, very limited and poor coverage of peer-reviewed publications, especially in the social sciences and humanities, where different languages and also book publications remain important. The Helsinki Initiative stresses that recognizing high-quality research in all languages is a challenge not only of research metrics, but also of expert assessment. A sufficiently diverse pool of experts and linguistic skills are needed in the assessment panels. Starting with the DORA declaration, an increasing number of international statements outline guiding principles for responsible research assessment. Instead of narrow focus on research, publications, and metrics, responsible assessments entail rewarding broad range of open science practices, recognizing diverse outputs, activities, impacts of academic work, as well as respecting the differences between fields. The Helsinki Initiative promotes the multilingualism aspect of responsible assessment that has been neglected in many of the other international statements. So the initiative promotes an evaluation culture where researchers trust that they can make a career and have funding if they publish high quality work in multiple languages, spend time on acting as editor or reviewer for local language journals, and write also to policymakers, professionals, and general public. Thank you for your attention. Please read and sign the initiative. Even better if you can convince your organization to do so. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Janne. Yes, do we have any questions? We do. Thank you for addressing this very important question of multilingualism, which is relevant in all the Nordic countries. We have a rich body of different languages in use in academy, even if we used to think only about English and maybe the national languages. And Frank Ojvang from Finland has formulated a very good question. How could we encourage minorities to publish in any of their languages that may be smaller languages? And even in Finland, if we take every language that is being spoken, there are almost 200 different languages spoken. So how could we encourage the minorities to use their own languages in the Nordic countries?
Well, that's a very good question. I know that apart from the, I think there are a few Sami language academic journals in the Nordic countries, but then of course the Nordic societies are so multicultural and so many different languages are spoken. So it is already one large challenge that if we in Finland, if the research community communicates only in English, Swedish, and Finnish, how do we reach some of the audiences that might prefer to have knowledge available in their own languages? So I'm not sure how can we encourage different minorities to publish. Maybe there are academic journals available in other countries that could be outlets for publications in different languages. But I think also one of the big challenges is to how do we communicate in the Nordic countries to broader range of audiences with different language preferences that are not the usual ones.
Yes, and in the Nordic countries, the relevant question is how to preserve the Scandinavian languages as or Skandinaviska and Scandinavian languages as a working language, and also as a relevant channel to keep relevant channels alive for publishing in these languages. But if we take this a step further to social media and social networking sites, then you can maybe say that you can always communicate about English language or national language publications in different languages. And if we want to talk about different multilingualistic practices in social media, so Knut has a question related to that.
Yeah, I was wondering, how do you see participating in, for example, Twitter discussion in English, but linking to a publication in a Scandinavian language, for example, a Norwegian publication in one of the official Norwegians?
Well, I think that would be a good idea. I am not not a full-time academic, so I have an administrative job. I do some academic work, and if I write something in Finnish, I sometimes do exactly what you suggested, that I then tweet about it in English, the main outcome, and maybe vice versa. If I have published something in English, I often tweet and or post in Facebook something about it, the main results in Finnish. So I think social media is a very useful tool for to employ in multilingual communication within the academic community in the country, but also to the broader audiences if they might have interest in the topic.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good way to translate and to make research accessible. Here we have also rediscovered how important it is to, if you are publishing in smaller languages, that there are English abstracts available, for example, so you can always link to them and use them as a base for arousing interest in your article when communicating in whatever language. So yes, this is an important aspect. I hope we will be able to get your slides and put them onto our website, because there were many useful links and very interesting data available.
Yes, of course, I will send you the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Janne. And thank you for Helsinki Initiative on Multilingualism for promoting this aspect. Now we will go further to our next speaker and next platform, which will be Publons, which is another kind of a scholarly platform than those previously addressed, because it deals with peer reviewing and peer reviews. And we have Julia Muat, who is head of the Web of Science Academy at Publons, who will present the platform for us. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. Sorry, it's a bit dark. It's evening here. I'm based in New Zealand, but I'll try and see.
Yes, we can hear you.
Right. Oh, wait, can you see my little notes, or can you see? Just check something here quickly. There we go. Now you should see it. Yes. I think. So yeah, thank you for inviting me to talk a little bit about Publons today. I'm going to try and focus on what the webinar, well, this is what I was told. Your webinar is focusing on more scholarly outreach sort of communication. But yeah, my name is Julia Moet. I'm head of the Web of Science Academy. And yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Publons is, how it differs from other sort of researcher profile platforms out there, and then a little bit about some different features you can use that kind of fits within sort of scholarly outreach. And then hopefully, yeah, there should be plenty of time for questions, I guess, afterwards. So yeah, let's start with a quick introduction to the Publons platform. I thought I'd just start with a little bit of history first. So Publons was founded here in New Zealand by Andrew Preston and Daniel Johnston quite a few years ago. It launched in 2012. So Andrew has a background in academia, and his main sort of reason for coming up with Publons was because he had published research and realized it's, you know, by the time you've come up with your research, you're writing it up, by the time it's published and going through that peer review process, it can take quite a long time, you know, like a year or maybe even longer, especially in the sciences. And all this sort of peer review work and editorial work you're doing is often anonymous and sort of in the background. It's not really, you know, as transparent of who's actually doing all the work, or, you know, what kind of papers you're contributing to within your field besides just publishing. So that was sort of another goal of Publons, as well as sort of making peer review more transparent. So like I said, we published in 2012 and were acquired by Clarivate in 2017. So we're actually now part of Clarivate's Web of Science. And the Web of Science also had this sort of researcher ID that's kind of been merged with Publons now. And that's just one of the sort of more original logos are added in there. So there's two main sort of parts to Pop-Lux. There's the public profile and the sort of private dashboard. So I'm just going to show a lot of screenshots today, but of course, I hope you'll go on later and have a bit of a look around yourself. So this is just what a typical sort of public profile looks like, and this is just me. So of course, it's got the typical, your publishing name, profile picture, and you can add your research fields, past institutions, etc. So people can sort of identify you, because of course a researcher profile is kind of a public CV for a researcher. There's also various metrics that you can choose to have visible on your public profile. And there's some additional metrics as well in your private dashboard that I'll show in a bit. But it'll just sort of focusing on the typical sort of metrics like citations and peer reviews that you've done and over time and that kind of stuff. And again, you can choose, what you want to have public. Within the private dashboard, there's a bit more sort of metrics, and I just wanted to highlight two that I thought were kind of cool. So this is the Web of Science author impact theme plot, because of course, researchers talk a lot about, citations and the H-index, and it might not be sort of the perfect way, of course, to portray a researcher, because of course, a lot of research wants to be more nuanced, such as one number, but this is sort of a good way to show your citation impact over time, how that's changed. So it might not be super obvious, but if you click in, there's some more sort of information about how to read it as well. But basically, in purple, the purple dots here, you've got the citation percentiles, and that's sort of averaged annually in that green circle, and it's got the median is the dashed line there as well, so you can kind of see what's the overall sort of percentile median of your citations. And I can just show a little bit of sort of how it's changed over time. So again, this is just something we sort of are working on, different metrics as well within the Institute for Scientific Information within Clarivate. The other thing I thought would be fun to show, so again, this is just sort of a bit more of a fun tool. This is a citation map that shows sort of the global impact your papers are having. So it shows the other people or other researchers that are citing or referencing your work. You can see which institutions they're part of and who the researchers are that authored those papers. So you can go in and zoom in and click and see a bit more detail, which other papers specifically have sort of cited your work. That's just more a bit of a fun tool. So that's just sort of really quickly, what is platforms? But I guess what you're maybe a bit more interested in hearing is how does it actually differ from all these other platforms? Because there's a few different sort of researcher platforms out there. And of course, a lot of research companies bother always updating different platforms, but we differ in quite a few different ways. And the main thing I think is, of course, that we focus on peer review, but also now that we are part of the Web of Science, there's a lot more of a focus on quality. Of course, you can add all your publications and all your work you've done on your profile, but we sort of highlight the higher quality ones, or the ones that are part of the Web of Science core collection. So all journals that are indexed in the core collection have undergone sort of a strict editorial selection or screening. We have a full editorial team that sort of makes sure that each journal is sort of adhering to these really good standards within the industry. And like I said, the profiles give a bit more of a full view of a researcher's contributions, not just publications, but also peer review and editorial work. So we actually partner with publishers to help verify these. But even if you've done editorial or peer review work for a journal that's not one of our partners, we can still verify those in other ways. So again, this is a really cool way to show a researcher's total impact. Even a really diligent researcher might publish a few papers a year. So that's maybe, let's say 2 papers, but they might have peer reviewed 3 papers that year. So they've contributed not just 2, but they've contributed towards 5 publications within their field in that year. So it's also a really important contribution because you're helping improve the quality and soundness of other research that's published in your field. And I think especially with early career research, it also shows that if journal editors are relying on you to peer review, they're relying on you to sort of quality screen other papers that are published in your field. So it's a really good thing to have on your CV. Another thing that we have is open peer review content. So that's both pre-publication reviews, so that's reviews that are done for journals, So that would be the journals that have a form of open peer reviews. That could be both the reports, or it could just be the name of the peer reviewer who did the peer review. But you can also write post-publication, also sometimes called community peer reviews on our platform. So any paper you read that you find really interesting, you can write sort of a review or a commentary on that. It could be, for example, a older paper and there's more research that's been done now, and you can sort of put it into context a bit more, or it might be more relevant now. Or it might be a paper you just found really interesting and you sort of had hoped that, or wished that you'd been invited to peer review, but you didn't. You can write a post-publication peer review of that. And sometimes with the pre-publication peer review as well, and I'll show some screenshot examples in a few slides, but it has not always just the reviewer comments, like the review report, but also have the editorial decision letter and the author's responses as well, sort of the full history of the peer review. And then I just wanted to mention the online training as well, because this is sort of what my role is. I'm head of the Web of Science Academy that used to be Publins Academy. So it's a suite of online free training courses that focuses on research integrity, so peer review, but also what constitutes good citation behavior, or what constitutes ethical publishing behavior and things like that. But just a few screenshots to just to show a little bit more what it is I'm talking about. When I say that we have a little bit more of a focus on quality, or at least a focus on what's sort of indexed in Web of Science. For example, the total citations that's within the metrics on the profile, that only includes citations from articles that are from journals that are indexed in the Web of Science core collection. And when you come to your publication list, it will have that little sort of Web of Science flag as well to denote that this publication is in a journal that was published in the Web of Science. And again, that's just to sort of help compare, especially institutions or funders, anyone that's sort of comparing researchers' profiles. Of course, someone might have hundreds and hundreds of publications, but if they're all in sort of lower tier journals, what does that say about that research's overall quality compared to someone that might only have, let's say they've got 20 publications, but they're all really top journals. And again, this is because there's a lot of, there's been a lot of pushback from the researcher community about, it's not just about quantity, but quality, and having more focus on quality as well. And how I mentioned that we partner with different publishers to help verify peer review and editorial records and contributions. We partner with all the sort of major publishers much out there. It's just some of the publishers. And here are some examples of open and pre and post publication peer review content. So in this sort of bigger photo here, you can see the sort of whole peer review history. So that was, peer review report, a decision letter, and then the author's response and the final decision letter. And you can scroll down and see that whole history, which is really good, especially for early career researchers that are sort of just learning about peer reviewing, or even just submitting their first manuscripts for a journal and sort of seeing, okay, what kind of reviewer comments can I expect? How are you supposed to respond to the reviewer comments and in the author response, etc. And it also just shows an example of a post-publication review and how you can, also score a publication, or, share it to Twitter, again, to sort of promote, if you want to start a discussion around a particular paper you found really interesting and you want to write a post-publication review, you can share that on Twitter as well if you want. And this is just a screenshot to show so the Web of Science Academy and the kind of courses we have on there. A few of our courses focus very much on teaching early career researchers how to peer review together with their PhD supervisor or postdoc advisor, for example, but we also have a community of volunteer peer review mentors on the platform as well. And that's very much about co-reviewing like real manuscripts together with a mentor and getting feedback, because that's sort of the best way to learn, really. A lot of early career researchers learn to peer review on the job. They just receive that first peer review invitation and don't really always know what's expected of them. So that's sort of to help with that, and just to help sort of improve the overall peer review process. So that was really quickly that. And now just a little bit more about some cool features and how you can use Poplins within outreach and communication. So I thought one cool thing is that if you complete your profile, adding all your publications and peer reviews that you might have done, and you can export a CV, so a researcher CV called the Papuan CV. Again, you can decide what you want on there, like of the metrics and that. You can sort of tailor that a bit. And again, when it comes to peer review, you can sort of decide, because there would be no detail usually about the manuscript or who the authors were. It'll just have the name of the journal, or even just the name of the publisher. You can sort of decide the level of information that you want to show on your CV and on your profile. Another really cool feature we have is for any journal. So basically all journals are pretty much in the Publins database, even if they're partners or not. So any journal that you see on you can just scroll to, there's different browse tables, and you can search for journals within your field. You can click onto their page and you can click a button that says sort of express interest to review for that journal. So especially our partner journals get regular sort of notifications about reviewers, and they can click onto your Publins profile and see, how, if you're, first of all, I guess, qualified, and what are your expertise and what are your interests, and, what are your research fields. So this is also why it's really important to have an up-to-date profile with all your publications, or if you do have any prior peer review history, but also really clear research fields and a good bio about, what is your expertise, or what are you interested in, what are you currently working on, and that kind of stuff. It's not going to guarantee you to be invited to peer review, but if you're interested in reviewing for new journals or different journals or getting into reviewing, that's one way of doing that as well. Another really cool feature is that for any peer review done for a journal, you can request feedback from the editor. So again, this is something you can do from your private dashboard. You just put in the editor's name and email address, and you can request feedback. So again, really good if you're sort of just starting out in peer review and you don't really know if you're on the right track, or you did a really good peer review. Sometimes you don't get any feedback from the journal or the editor at all. And there is a different sort of scoring system, and I don't quite remember, but I think it's, if you get 13 out of 16 or higher than that, you can get an excellent reviewer badge in your profile as well, if you're interested in that. But mostly just really good to get that sort of feedback and a different way to sort of connect with editors. And like I mentioned, the post-publication or community peer reviews, I really encourage anyone to sort of write peer reviews if you want to practice sort of critiquing or practice writing about a paper from a different way. Some labs might do journal clubs, so you might sort of practice in that way, but writing post-publication reviews is another really good way to sort of practice. And again, like I said, you can share them on Twitter or other media platforms as well. And then recently, peer review content has been added to the Web of Science author records as well. So that's both verified content, but also community peer reviews. So that's just another way to sort of put your comments or your sort of ideas out there. Oh yeah, then I have a few screenshots as well. So this is just what an example Publins CV looks like. So this is sort of mine. So you can see it includes, the journals you've peer reviewed for and whether they're indexed in Web of Science. And you can sort of choose which metrics you want to have on there. So that can be an easy, I don't know how many researchers do it, but whenever you're applying for funding or you're applying for a new job or something like that, it can just be really easy to just get all your, it's just with the click of a button if your profile is up to date. So that's a really cool feature.
Julia, time to wrap up.
Oh, sorry, and this is just a few screenshots, and then that's it actually. So yeah, this is just showing the excellent reviewer badge, what it looks like, and that's it.
Thank
if there's
you.
any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Yes, thank you, Julia. We chose Publins because of these features of peer review and editorial contributions. I think that's something that differs from all other scholarly platforms and is truly unique. And Publins is also one of the platforms that's less known, maybe, and often overshadowed by these more traditional, like Academia Edu, ResearchGate, and so on. So that's why we wanted to hear more about Publins, and thank you for giving us this overview. I'm personally using Publins to make my review records visible and available also for myself, because you are doing peer reviews regularly, but then you just forget about them. But then you on Publins, because you get an automated list of all peer reviews you have done before. So you can see that, oh, I have collaborated with this journal and in these disciplines, and it gives a good overview of what you have been doing. And the other one is, it says on my profile page that I'm an academia graduate or something, because I went to a course that very concretely showed how to peer review. And I went it through to get an idea if it would be useful for students. And I really experienced that it was a very useful tool for showing in a concrete steps how to make a good peer review. So I can really recommend this tool for all of you who are for example, teaching scholarly communication and these kinds of practices. And the other one is, of course, making record of all editorial contributions, because that's also something that's not very often listed or doesn't come visible in the same way as all publications that you have authored by yourself. So thank you. This is a good complement to a complementation or complement the other platforms. Then, because
just quickly, I forgot to mention, but we just released a new course that's focusing on reviewing in the humanities. I know there's been a lot of focus on the sciences, but we just released a course last month that's focusing on just reviewing in typical humanities, social sciences, like different types of manuscripts with like literature reviews, monographs, and that kind of stuff.
Fantastic that you are also integrating online training and online courses into this community. That's also something that the other platforms are not doing, right? If I have understood it right. So this is good to know. Then I'm afraid we have to go further. We don't have that much time for questions anymore. We thank you, Julia, and thank you, Pablons. And the best way is just to register and explore the platform, how it works. You will, it's quite easy to use. So you will discover it by yourself. That's the best way. Then we will move forward to the more general social media platforms that are not only academic, but there are all kinds of people communicating also about research. And the question is how to reach out to academic and non-academic audiences on Twitter, Instagram, and Clubhouse. And we'll start by Twitter. And we have Julia Penlert, who is a senior lecturer in library and information science at the University of Borås in Sweden. And she will share the best practices on Twitter with us. Please, Julia.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me, and hello from Gothenburg in Sweden. I will try to share my screen. Let's see here. Yes, you can see my screen right now. And also thank you for the invitation, because then I had to stop and reflect upon my Twitter use and how I use Twitter as a scholar, and also if I am a media scholar or not, since I have a background in literary studies. But I think this presentation might give you some insight in how I use Twitter, and also what kind of more general questions that Twittering as a scholar also might lead to. If you want my Twitter name, you have it there. So, am I a media scholar or not is the first question that I will attend shortly to, since I come from a background of literary studies, and I have my PhD in literary studies from University of Umeå. And I now work as a lecturer in library and information science, not studies, with special focus on reading and reading promotion. So basically, although I have a background within journalism and media and communication studies, I attended some courses in Gothenburg. I don't see myself as a media scholar, but we will get back to that definition later. In my teaching, I teach at courses in the bachelor level in library and information science, and I also have a couple of courses within the master program with the same focus, but also tightly attached to my research interest, and that is contemporary literature, how literature and reading is affected by digital technology, and also digital humanities and digital methods. So this is some examples of my publication lists here in the book, printed book format. It's really interesting that I can sort of show you printed books here. My dissertation, that was about one of the largest poetry communities in Sweden called poeter.se, where about 300 poems and 500 text comments are published each day. And then working with my PhD thesis, I also started to be interested in digital humanities and how digital humanities might affect the research processes in the humanities, and especially within literary studies. So my research interest sort of covers also digital technology and how we can use digital technology to both publish materials, but also to investigate these materials in different ways. And then I tried to look at Twitter and how long I've been in Twitter and what I do in Twitter. I think I started my Twitter account in 2011. So I've been tweeting since around a decade for now. And I also think that we can get back to the question of language, because that is also really interesting in relation to Twitter and scholarly communication as such. So this is a map of my Twitter use, or some of the reasons why I choose Twitter as a publication platform, and the motives or the aims with my twittering that this invitation sort of led me to reflect upon in a further sense. So the first question is, or sort of point or issue here, is the interdisciplinary questions. Starting off with defining myself not as a media scholar, we can also see how my research interest evolves around different kind of disciplinary boundaries. So one aim with my twittering or tweeting is to keep me updated on recent studies within my broad field of research interests. That is digital methods, literary in the contemporary media landscape, digital cultures, and how reading and writing affects or appear in digital media. So what I basically do is that I use Twitter as an external monitoring, omvärldsbevakning in Swedish. That is that I keep me updated with recent studies and also look into ongoing projects that could be of relevance for my own research, but also, and this is important, for my teaching at the department. I also use Twitter as a platform for networking, of course. I don't know why I got this invitation, but I seem to have made visible traces on Twitter as my own sort of activity on Twitter has led to this talk. So I try to communicate with actors, researchers, and the public on ongoing projects of my own, but also to tip where I can on other colleagues or research being done at my department, covering these issues such as digital media or digital methods, for example. But another thing is that I also use Twitter or online communication in different platforms as a research material on my own. Since I am interested in how literature is distributed, consumed, and talked about online, I also feel that my presence in Twitter is part of the research potential material in the future. How does people write about poetry online, for example? On Twitter, we have this hashtag in Sweden called Lyrikfredag, Poetry Friday, where people can write about poetry or post books, poetry collections, and advices or poetry, and then hashtag it as Lyrikfredag, Poetry Friday. So in that sense, I also use Twitter as research material, or to get a glance and glimpse of the digital literary culture as such, both in Sweden, basically mostly in Sweden, but also abroad. So the contemporary media climate, if I'm not or am a media scholar, also puts up demands on higher demands to reach out, as we all know. We have higher demands on collaboration and cooperation. I'm sorry, but I can't see my own screen. I have this dashboard, I have to move it, sorry. So what we are doing at our departments and how we can make these processes visible is one of the questions that I started to think of when I got this invitation. What are we making visible and why and for whom? But with this visibility in different kinds of media platforms, it also comes a responsibility. And this responsibility is to both be visible, but also to reflect upon what we're making visible and why. Is it possible for us as researchers, for example, to make research processes visible or not? And when is it suitable to do this? And I'm also very glad that we touched upon the question of language, because I mostly tweet in Swedish. And I think this also is a conscious selection for me. But I know there's some differences among scholars in different countries. When I did my PhD, I lived in Santa Barbara for 3 months. And within the field of digital humanities, it's most common that you tweet in English. And the professors and the academics in other countries do tweet in English. So my strategy is to sort of mix languages. Most of the time I tweet in Swedish, but it's also about the balances between private and professional. And I think also that is a really important point, or sort of suitable into the question of responsibility. And before I end, I also want to talk about the new demands on the public intellectual. If we are public intellectual at all, or how we can communicate our research in different media platforms, and the demands of us becoming more and more visible. So I will end my talk here today, and we will also have some time for questions, I hope, to just pinpoint some of the critical or more reflective points that I've made through this assignment preparing the talk today. And first of all, we have to think of in a more structural level, if tweeting or being visible in different media platforms are part of our daily job to communicate and to reach out with our research, or is it part of our free time duties? So coming into this assignment for me today, I also thought of when I'm tweeting. And I mostly tweet during night times or in the evenings, which clearly shows that it's sort of part of my free time. It's something that I do at home, and I have 2 kids at home, so it's something that I do when they sleep. From a more structural level, this is really interesting because it's nothing that I get paid for doing during my daily job. Although my supervisors or my bosses, they want me to be on social media, or they want me to be responsible for my own communication and to communicate my academic results and my ongoing projects. So another question here is it part of our duties alongside research and teaching? When and how do we use social media to communicate our research? Or should it be taken into account in, for example, salary discussions? As a quantitative measures, well, I have these kinds of followers on social media. Or should it be taken into account in other merit systems within academia? In Sweden, we have this docentur. You can be a docent. You can sort of level up in the academia hierarchy. Should our presence in social media and communication on social media platforms be part of how to merit ourselves? Another question that I also think is very interesting is if Twitter fits all. Sometimes when we talk about digital culture, we also think of how digital culture and technology is part of a really intense democratization of the free word. It is possible for everyone to use digital platforms and to take part of the digital culture and the discussions on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and whatnot. But as I see it, it's also a risk that these strategies also strengthen the filter bubbles around us, so that my tweets only get followed by other academics or other interested in these issues that I tweet about. And also, is it possible for everyone to take part of the discussions? It also brings higher demands to the public to look into and search for interesting discussions. Another large question is if these demands together create a certain scholarly practice in the future, or a certain scholar that are keen on many social medias or publishing platforms and need to have competences to navigate between them. But it's also restraints in the interface design on Twitter that also affect what and how to communicate. We don't have so many words or tecken. What is that? Word counts in Twitter. So that also affects the possibility to communicate, to make longer discussions, for example, or to problematize phenomenons. It's not like writing a dissertation monograph. You don't have so much space. So thank you. I will stop share and hopefully we can have some more questions and discussions about my tweeting, but also how I view on my Twitter presence.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you for showing us some very important points of reflection of how to use Twitter as an academic. I guess many academics do feel it a bit problematic that there is not that much space to write about issues that tend to be very complex, complicated, and it is a very special form of communication as well, a practice that needs to be trained. But I guess it's also a very good channel for encountering the world beyond the academic. Could you tell something about your encounters with non-academics? Is it very often you are engaged in discussions with authors, for example, or with the art world in more general, or then just ordinary users and debate with them on the topics you are researching?
Well, I think that some of the things here is also that the visibility that I am on Twitter. Sometimes I engage with other non-academic people, but I tend to not go into the debates because I think that it's really dangerous for any scholar. I mean, we need to take part of the public debate in different ways. But it's also easy for us to involve in contemporary debates on a very, I mean, since it's a restrained sort of interface, you don't get time to problematize, or you don't get time to discuss, or I mean, it's maybe the discussion is a better word, I think, than debates. But I don't know. What I don't know is how many non-academic people that see my tweets. So I have this. I might have invisible lurkers looking at my tweets and might be interested of them, but they are not actively retweeting or making this heart liking my tweet. So I think maybe that was an answer on your question. I don't know. I also encourage my students to do more social media literary promotion, for example, in my course that I teach, so that they can also understand how different platforms work in their future work as librarians, and how to use social media and digital platforms, for example, literary promotions.
Yes, as a media scholar, it's quite an important aspect to understand how platforms work, and the only way to gain experience or knowledge based on experience is to be engaged in those channels by yourself. But you also reflected upon how the boundary has to be drawn, how you should protect yourself as well. You cannot be engaged in all discussions and all the time, and how it is embedded in your routines and in which role, how to make the profile. There are many interesting questions, and I think our next speaker will talk more about how to create the profile and what kind of strategies to use. Do you have any questions regarding Twitter to Julia? I had one, a more technical question. Are you using any third-party applications for monitoring the discussions? Because the discussions can be overwhelming. And maybe if you seem to know what hashtags you are following, but can you systematize your monitoring with help of applications? But you are not using any.
You could do that. I have not done it yet, but I know that some of my colleagues in Borås, David Gunnarsson Lorentzen, for example, has written a whole dissertation on Twitter networks and hashtags. So there's a lot of ongoing research on how to systemize and understand hashtags, for example, but I'm not using TweetDeck, I just have the application on my cellular phone.
I have the feeling it was much easier 10 years ago, when you could go to a hashtag repository or database and look at the different hashtags that could be relevant for you. But nowadays it's also ad hoc, it's changing all the time, and it may be random as well, what you happen to stumble upon. One more question. Do you think that you can make a difference by addressing some important research-related questions on Twitter and be listened to in these things to promote your own research agenda? Or do you always, when you are communicating, do you always make a connection to your research? And trying
no, I think that it goes to maybe the question of responsibility. I think that we all have a responsibility as scholars of underlining the scientific community as such. So sometimes I can write about my own work, my own research work. Oh, well, I'm working on this right now. This book has come, this research anthology on audiobooks. That's something that I did during the spring. And then I can tweet about, now it's coming out, this book. Or this conference is dealing with these kinds of questions. But I also think that this is also not only an individual thing for me. I think it's important for us to see the whole scholarly communication process as a collective thing. And we have a responsibility as scholars being part of the public debate, and where this public debate or discussions are suited or placed. But I can sometimes make advices in the discussions about, well, this is an upcoming study on literature use among young people. You can have a look at this. Or this is a discussion going on in America right now on digital methods. You can have a look at this. So my main thing with Twitter is not sort of self-branding or only reach out with my research. Because when I can, I want to encourage also other people within the fields that I know of, and how they study different things both in Sweden and abroad, of course.
Okay, thank you. Really interesting to hear about the personal strategies, because they can be so different. Finding contacts, finding different publications, following conferences, engaging in debate. There are many, many different roles. And we will hear more about the roles now. Thank you, Julia. We want to welcome Jens Barland, who will talk about the strategies as a scholar in social networks, and he's associate professor at Christiania University College, and he will talk about social media with focus on Instagram, but maybe also about talking us about other platforms as well. So please welcome Jens Barland.
Yes, thank you, Marit. And is the picture and sound okay? Yeah, fine. And I'm a little bit sorry, I was not aware of this Instagram focus before, for a short while ago. But so I have prepared more in general for using the social media, but I will touch different channels. But it was a very nice bridge from the previous. From you, Marit, you talked about the personal strategy, and I have to. Why does it not shift page? Yes, there. I have only prepared one page, and my first point is to clarify this personal strategy. Why do you want to use social media for scientific communication? Because there are many different aims you can select, and you have to select your own strategy. Maybe you just want to be involved in debates, involved in discussions, or maybe you want to disseminate your things as a kind of popular dissemination and adapt it to the different channels you have. Or maybe you just want to use social media as a mean for distribution, distribute your own things, or share others' content that you think deserves to be shared because you are a part of a social network in your field. Maybe you want to be the celebrity of your field. Be the one who are of the top mind for people who think about your topic, and build your profile, and be the one who is demanded and recognized on the field. That can also be a strategy, and it's fair, it's nice. And another strategy can also be just to share your other colleagues, and you achieve a lot of goodwill in your social network because you are sharing a lot of nice content. And of course, I think your colleague will like that you share their content when it's relevant. So that is the different purposes and different strategies you can choose. Don't choose all of them. That's a mess. So it's nice to select one or a few things. But when you are using, especially if you use social media and a strategy for sharing and disseminate your own content, then you must have a landing page. Because in social media, in Twitter, you are very, very short texts, but also on Instagram, you are the visual format, and Facebook is a little bit, you can write a little bit more flexible. But however, the format of social media are so instant, short, and so you must have a landing page where they can read the texts that you really want to share and you want to send around. That means that you have to have you can make your own blog, or many institutions, they also allow you to have your own homepage or your own blog within the system of the institution. The are a little different from place to place, but you need to have your own place. So you have a place to get the readers to read the whole story, to say in that way. But then you come to this in the beginning, I said you have to have your propose a strategy for what you want to do. But then you come to all these different channels and they work different. And I will take a parallel. One of my research field is content marketing. And one type of content marketing is to do it native advertising, is the word we say. That is a kind of advertising that fits into with the content. You are very well aware of such commercial articles mixed with journalistic articles. That's that is a topic I have researched on. But if you go into typical Instagram, if you do something there, it has to look like a typical Instagram post. If you do it on Twitter, you have to formulate it, your short message in a way where, such as people write in Twitter, and the same with Facebook and so on. Because when a user, a reader, they use that channel, they are in a kind of a mode. Typical, they want to read and use these things in the mode they are, that fits into the format which are used into this channel, and you have to meet that mode if it should work. So that means on Facebook, there is a lot of old people like us. You see, our friends, our colleagues, they are typically the same as us. And when I say this, when I use this concept of native advertising, that also make a very good possibility for us to tailoring our texts, tailoring our message into the channel where we shall use it. And here I will pick up a point that was discussed a little bit earlier today about the language. And we have our national languages. We try to keep them as research languages. We also, in the Nordic countries, has this Sami language and also some other minority languages. And in the social media, if you have followers, if you have friends, if you have a social network that use this language, that you can use the language that fits that target group. And typical for my own experience is that I'm doing a lot of research very close to the industry, to the media industry. And our media managers, they are in our country, Norway, they are reading Norwegian. They don't read our scientific English texts. That is not the format they read. They want it popular, short, and in Norwegian. So then when I have published something scientific one or other place, then I can read, then I can typically write a short, popular Norwegian text and share it around, and it can typically also be as a debate article in one or other newspaper, one or other place. And I can even take a very, very short version of that with only the headlines, only the things that get attention, because as you know, even if you don't like it, but attention is and engagement, that is the things that works in the social media. So then you can do that and you get attention, you get them over to your landing page or the place you share, and there they will read in more context. So it can be not only in this very short and engaging headlines. But I can tell you that for I had 20 years in the media before I became a media researcher for 10 years ago. So, and a couple of years when I was very, very young, I used to make the front pages of a tabloid newspaper. So I have some of the art of saying something in a very engaging and a short way. So I use such such things in the text are used in the social media. Okay, then the point is that the channels, they are different, and you have to tailor your text into that. And I think also that, Julia, you had a point concerning use of Twitter and the working during the night, and an experience I have that many of the social media channels, they work best at night, because except of LinkedIn, that is something you use a lot in the working time, but much of the social media engagement, even for our social networks and for the manager, the industry, the people we are connected with, they use it during the night. So therefore, when I post something late about 10 o'clock, it will achieve a lot of engagement. If I do it in 10 o'clock in the morning, it will be dead. So that is also one of the points concerning tailoring it. But my fourth point, this social media engagement, when you are doing it in different channels in social media, you have your landing page, you are sharing things and so on, it makes it easy to find you. And you know how this Google and how this algorithms, how these things work. That means you also can make your activity search engine optimized. That is CEO. That means you think about what kind of words are they using, they who are looking for something, some content, so on, so on, so on. Then you have to ensure that you have used such, you can call it keywords, but you have to write such kind of keywords into your texts, so they will appear when people use Google and so on. Because when you wonder about something, what do? Yeah, you ask Google, maybe Google Scholar. It's also typical to ask on Facebook, to ask on YouTube, and so on. Such as these do. Journalists do that. Other researchers do that. Those who just need an expert, they ask these search engines. They who arrange lectures or professional events, and maybe some experts out there just want to make a report on something, or those who just need an expert. They search. And if you are very strategic on your texts and write in the words which you know work in well in a search engine, then you will appear and they will find you. And maybe you don't like the word I used in the beginning to build up yourself as a celebrity, but you will appear as one who is very engaged in that topic. And then I'm on the next one, build your own profile. So I think that you want to do more than just be involved in discussions on Facebook. You want to have a digital profile. And you also, to do this in the way I described, you will take an ownership on how you appear. Because I think that every one of us, we have experiences, nonsense, idiotic debates, ugly debates, mud wrestling in the discussions, and criticism that we feel are completely failed to what I said. But this idiotic content will survive in the social media, on the web, and it will survive on the search engines. But if you get a very idiotic comment or reaction to some of your things, if you include that in what you are writing, then when this content is coming up on search engines, then they will maybe read it in the context you put it. They will even get your answer together with the idiotic reactions. And that is a way where you can take control of the digital image of yourself, of your own profile. And I also had one thing here. One thing is to share your own things, but if you share a lot of other colleagues, very good content, then you will be very active. You will be very engaged in the social media, and the algorithms, they will lift up active actors. So, and I also think that your colleagues, they will love you. They will love your sharing around. So, but only your activity itself will lift you up in the search engines. And it will also help to build your profile as the one engaged in these topics, and or say it in another way, in these keywords operating the algorithms. So when you are very active on a keyword, the search engines will also lift up you and as a profile. So even if I don't talk so very much now about specifically on Instagram, I talked a little bit more in general on use of social media. And if you can see, maybe in my picture, it's covered by the pictures of you, but on the right side of my presentation, I have a link to a book written of a colleague of mine. It's in Norwegian, but if you can read Norwegian, that is a book on how researchers can use social media. There you have a lot of very good ideas. But finally, if you are active, you build your profile, you are lifted up and so on, your research will achieve greater impact. That is the point.
Thank you, Jens. And we will collect some relevant books, literature on the webpage afterwards. Thank you. Now I would like to bring the discussion back to Instagram. Why use Instagram as a media scholar? And what kind of a landing page should you have then? And what kind of requirements does that platform or app pose to you? Do you have a spontaneous answer to that, Jens?
Yes, Instagram is visual, it's pictures. So that means that and it's very personal. So I have not used Instagram myself for scientific purposes. There I use other channels. So,
why not?
No, in my, I will just talk about my own experiences. Instagram is more private it's not private, it's global, you can see everything. It's not in that way private, but it's for my purpose, it is not very much mixed with the job and job interest. But however, to some degree it is. For instance, when I have done very nice things with my students, we have been here or there, visited some places, they made some very good some design things, then I posted it there, because these design things, that was some visual things. But on Instagram, it can be a little bit difficult. They don't allow you in the same way as Facebook to share links. The use of links, that you have to copy it and then go into your browser and paste it into there. So Instagram is not so liberal to let your posted links be something you can just use by a click.
Yes.
So therefore, that is also a reason I don't think it works here. But on the other hand, I can see that a lot of my professional colleagues, they have connected to me on Instagram, and then they can read a lot about all my trips into the mountains, which are private.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, we can see that as we media researchers would say, the affordances of the platform or the app restrict and give us possibilities in adapting our communication. And I think the biggest problem or challenge with Instagram and the visualization requirement is that media research is not always that visual. It's more suitable for scientific researchers who are working in labs or something. That if you are following hashtags PhD or PhD chat or PhD life or something, they are often about lab work because it's easier to depict that kind of activities rather than sitting at the computer and thinking. But Catherine has something to say. She has raised her hand. So Catherine, please.
Hi, Jens. Sorry, I have to disagree with you. No, I actually agree and disagree, because I think it depends on how you use Instagram, because I've this past autumn, I have had a lot of positive experience with sharing scientific communication on Instagram, and it works perfectly. It just depends. I mean, of course, you cannot share a full paper on Instagram. That's not what it's meant for. But you can make a carousel with facts and boxes, and you can link to, some people have this link sticker now. So you can link to your personal web page or at your university or whatever. And also you can make, I know this might sound terrible for some scholars, but reels are the new thing on Instagram. I mean, pictures, yes, if you're a photographer, go for it. But I think not interactive pictures with just whatever you want to show there. I think that's kind of not the best way to communicate there anymore. So I've had reach for 3,000 or 4,000 people that are not my followers when I share reels with science communication, and it's a way to do it more fun, and also it can be fact-based, but you have to do it in a you have to attract people, and you have to have a hook, so people can go into either your web page or another sort of a social media platform. But I think it is doable, but it takes a lot of time. I mean, I've spent now several months building it up, and I've seen that very slowly but surely I'm trying to build up this community, and it is possible. But yeah, so it is. It takes time, but it is definitely possible.
Yeah. If you have any good links to or good accounts to showcase, maybe you can leave them to the chat box so we can have some concrete examples, which is fantastic.
Yes. But I think I will agree with Catherine, and most of all, I'm sorry that I was not aware of the specific Instagram that I'm prepared for social media in general. But however, I agree with you that Instagram can be an emerging channel, because they are allowing now a lot of interactive elements into stories and into the pictures. And also my experience is the same as you. If you use a hashtag and you find very, very good hashtags, then you can achieve a large public, much larger than your own number of followers.
Julia, you have a question or a comment?
I think it's more of a comment, but I think related to Instagram and the disciplinary boundaries, I also think that Instagram is a perfect spot for people working within, for example, arts or humanities, or photographs were mentioned, but also other kinds of disciplines working with visual material, like arts or sculptures or something like that. So also to document the process of making these things. And at least in Sweden, we have a lot of departments working with artistic knowledge and how to improve artistic knowledge and how to crowdsource or gain tips on tricks on how to explore a material, for example. So I also would just like to add that it's part of what kind of discipline that you are active in, and what kind of community that you can build in different social media platforms and affordances.
Even though you are not working in a very visual discipline, you might learn from the best examples. So please share your best examples in the chat box so we can concretely see how these good examples can look like. And now, because we are running a bit late, I'd like to go further to our next speaker and the next platform, and we can then come back to these issues in the final discussion, of course. But we still have one app to cover in our program. It's Clubhouse. It has aroused interest lately because it's new new app, and it has also aroused criticism because in April we heard that a database with user records was leaked on a hacker forum, and we want to hear more about this audio chat based app, and Catherine Duarte is here to tell something about or tell the basics about this app. And Catherine is researcher in climate communication at the University of Bergen, but she has also launched a group called Klimaklubben, Norges första och största CH-klubb om klimat och miljö. Norway's first and largest clubhouse club about climate and milieu. And we are very impressed because it has more members than NordMedia network, almost 800 members. So please, Catherine, please tell us more about this new app. The screen is yours.
Thank you. I can't see my presentation, but you see it, I hope.
We don't actually. We saw
okay,
it. We saw it.
Okay,
really
I will try again.
Okay.
Yeah. This is the first time I try with Canva, so we'll see if it works. Let's see now. So this is the first screen. Of course, media researcher having trouble presenting. That's normal. Let's see now. Very normal. Yeah.
While waiting, you can think about these best examples that you might share on any platform and leave them to the chat box.
Can you see it now?
No, we only...
Okay, let's see. If I do this, then I have full screen on my computer. I can't see anything else.
We see your desktop.
Yes.
You only see my desktop. Okay, that's not good. Okay, let's see. Let's try now.
We already saw your presentation once, but
yeah, the first time before I was supposed to start. Yeah. Okay, let's see. I have it here. Maybe because I have two screens. This always happens. Yes. So maybe I should just start talking because we're already late.
Yeah, and we can also put the slides onto the website.
Yeah. And I think I sent it to Mia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. So let's see now. This is embarrassing. Okay, I'll try again. Or maybe Mia can try to show my slides.
Oh, now we see it.
You see it? Because I can't see anything. I can't even see my notes, but it's okay. Okay, let's see now. There it is. Okay, I'll just start and I'll move and you tell me if you can see it, that's fine. I don't have the screen in front of me, but that's fine. Okay, so hi and welcome to this very speedy talk on Clubhouse. First of all, I want to thank the organizers for inviting me because to full disclosure, I haven't been active on the app since before summer. So this is a really good time so I don't forget everything I know about Clubhouse. Okay, I'll move to the next slide. Can you see it?
Yeah.
There? The welcome slide, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So my name is Catherine. I'm a media researcher about to submit my thesis on climate communication. And I work now as a freelancer and consultant in media communication. I'm currently writing a book on climate journalism in Norwegian. And before I start, I would like to have, if you could please just raise your hands, how many of you are on Clubhouse, so I know who knows what I'm talking about. Okay, so a couple of hands. Yes, good. Okay, so many of you have at least heard about Clubhouse, I think, and I hope, because it was everywhere this past winter. At least here in Norway, was mentioned in a lot of newspapers and blogs and etc. So it was really popular, and it was definitely a hype, but I will come back to that later. This is a quick overview about on this talk and what I will talk about. I will just not go into it because we're running out of time, and I want to leave some time for questions. So what is actually Clubhouse? It's a social audio app, and I think it was a genius idea to develop an app during a pandemic. It was originally designed for podcasts under the name of talk shows in the beginning of 2020. And the easiest way to describe it is it's a kind of a panel discussion where one or several moderators and participants interact in the how to say, in sort of a and the audience are listeners, but moderators can invite listeners to the talk and to the conversations. In the hallway, you will find all ongoing rooms, and in the calendar, you find scheduled rooms. So here on the right-hand corner, you find my bio, and below it, you find the hallway where you can search for rooms and different topics. And on the pink bubbles is just one example of one room where we're all women talking about the green life hacks earlier this spring. This past year, Clubhouse was mentioned 600 times in Norwegian media, but over 1,200 times in Sweden. So I guess Clubhouse was more popular in Sweden than here. I'm not sure about that. Anyway, I joined the app on February the 9th. I got an invitation from a colleague, a former colleague, and I was well aware of the hype around this app before I joined, but little did I know that I was going to get so addicted. In the beginning, I spent around 6 to 7 hours daily on the app. While I was brushing my teeth, while I was picking up my kids from school and kindergarten. So I was really hooked, to say the least. And I basically used it as a podcast or a radio. So I had always sound on while I was working or while I was on other meetings. So I was really addicted. And I believe, as I said, that the app gained such popularity because it was released in the midst of a pandemic, and people had nothing else to do than just to stay in their homes, and they really wanted to interact with other people. Also, I think because it was sort of exclusive, it was just released for iOS and iPhone in the beginning. I think it's also that made it a little bit more interesting, and people even paid to get invitations in the beginning, which I found very puzzling because, I mean, yeah, it was not that hard to get invitations on Clubhouse. Can you see the timeline now? Yes? Okay, yes. Cool. Yes. So Clubhouse was founded by Rohan Seth and Paul Davison in the fall of 2019, and it was released in the US first in March 2020. And it quickly gained 600,000 users in the US. But it wasn't until the beginning of this year that the app started to get interest in Europe. First Germany, then Scandinavian countries. But it was mainly celebrities such as Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Leonardo DiCaprio that really spiked the interest here in Europe, because everyone wanted to listen into these celebrities, because otherwise they were unreachable maybe. And in February, these are Clubhouse's own numbers, so I haven't verified them, but I believe there were a lot of interaction and followers in the app. In February, the growth was from 3.5 million worldwide to 8.5. I've seen 10 million other places. But the thing is, there were a lot of unverified accounts, so it was and fake accounts. So it was quite difficult to know who was really the person talking on stage. Was it really Leonardo DiCaprio? Was it just a fake account? So there were a lot of rumors about that as well. During the spring this year, Clubhouse really started to lose users and popularity, and I think it was mainly due to the pandemic losing its grip. Now society was started to gradually open up after really strict restrictions. And in May, the app released the Android version of it, but I think it was still losing users. So just very quickly on the pros and cons of this app, I basically used it for for networking. I've been given job opportunities and interviews based on the people I met on the app and the connections I made there. Secondly, I think it's very rare that you get to listen into conversation with people, or you can even talk to people that are unavailable in your daily life, such as Dr. Jane Goodall or climate professor Catherine Hayhoe, for example, which is a big star in the climate research community. And I will say the cons are really problematic, because in the beginning you needed to share your whole contact list to be able to join the app. I didn't do that. I just share my phone number, which is also problematic. And it's not the best strategy if you, for instance, have an ex-partner there, or you have a former colleague that you want to avoid, or whatever. And that's, Clubhouse got a lot of negative feedback because of that. Also, it was a sort of safe haven for toxic content and privacy issues, like such as, for toxic content. There were a lot of racism, there were a lot of negative comments, and it was really difficult to, and Clubhouse got a lot of criticism on because they didn't handle it very quickly. So the only option was to report users, and then they would get banned from the app, and that was not maybe the best strategy. Also, there's a lot of noise on Clubhouse. I followed too many people to begin with, which made it a very messy hallway. In this case, suggestions to rooms. I got rooms from Saudi Arabia and in French and Japanese and whatever language, which was very frustrating because I wanted English-speaking rooms or even Spanish or Norwegian, but yeah, I got too many suggestions in the beginning. And I think also it's a red flag that it's so addicting and time-consuming. And I have almost left the app now because I spent too much time in the beginning, and my family was getting frustrated because I was always listening to something. Now I go into the app, I see who's logged in, and if there are any interesting rooms going on, I will just log on if I don't find anything interesting. So just a quick glance on the inside of this is from the Climate Club. So on the morning of the March 6th, I found out that everyone could start their own clubs. I found out through a Norwegian club, Marketing Norway, which is the biggest club in Norway. And having a club meant that you could have your own space on Clubhouse where you could invite people, you can host discussions in rooms, and you could gain more visibility in the hallway. So earlier you had to apply Clubhouse to start a club, which I actually did, but now after March 6th, everyone could start. And before this date, I felt that there was a sense of community in Norwegian rooms, at least. Afterwards, everyone wanted to start clubs, and there were many competing clubs and similar clubs around. As Maud said, the Climate Club is the largest climate and environmental club in Norway, as far as I know. In my club, I wanted to host low-key conversation on environmental and climate issues. So I hosted rooms on minimalism, plant-based food, sustainable fashion, recycle, etc. But I also hosted a lot of nerdy conversations with politicians and scientists, such as how are we going to electrify the Norwegian oil field, and what is the future of lab-made meat, for example. What I've learned from the Climate Club is that, okay, personally, I reach a lot of people. I gained 600 followers personally, but the Climate Club had over 800 followers. But the most important thing I learned is that moderation is key. I think you need to have good moderators, and you need to have prepared moderators if you have comprehensive topics. Also, timing is key, as Jens and other has mentioned here. It's for all social media. To have a conversation at 8 o'clock, it's quite different to have it at 8 p.m. because then people are maybe just settling down for the evening. Maybe they just want something easy going on to listen to. So I think you need to see what kind of topic you want to talk about, and then decide and tailor-made your scheduling after that. Because people were so how to say, in need of a connection to other people, I think it was quite easy to just have a conversation and see who would join the conversation afterwards. But now I think you need to really tailor it and plan it accordingly, because there are so many rooms, as I explained earlier. And also, since Clubhouse was definitely a hype, I think it's extremely hard to get scientists on the platform. I tried a lot, and maybe some scientists say, what do we need another app for, or another platform? I don't have time for it. So it was very difficult to get scientists on the platform. Now I think several people have joined since, but it's still very difficult to find Norwegian and Scandinavian rooms. Either way, I think I managed to build a community, and it was fun, educational, and sometimes provocative and frustrating, to say the least. So if I could just share with you some pro tips on Clubhouse. Don't start a club if you don't have time to administer it and keeping active. And I think also it's really important to join other clubs and ask if you can host a room under a relevant or specific club if you have found a club. And I think also you don't have to be afraid to join a conversation. I mean, even big celebrities are people like you and me, and it's maybe a little bit less scary to just have it on audio than asking people face to face. Also expand your search, because if you follow people with your similar interests and you want the algorithm to work for you and not against you, I think it's a really smart thing to do. And lastly, I think it's a very thin line between Clubhouse and podcasting. I know of several people that started podcast after they joined Clubhouse and after they had very positive experiences on Clubhouse, because you're already familiar with the audio. Or maybe you need some different kind of settings and props, but it's still sort of the same thing, that you communicate with people, you ask them. This is a whole a little bit interview process there and research, of course, but it is possible. And I think that's a very nice experience. Really quickly on the summary, because I want to leave some time for questions. Actually, this where you cannot record anymore, this has changed since the first app version. Now you can make short 30-second clips of some rooms where the host can allow it. So if you're listening to something interesting, you can make some short clips and maybe just save it for later. But some hosts, they don't allow it. And some hosts do record everything because they use it as a podcast later on. But then it will clearly say, because the Clubhouse rules and the guidelines tell you not to record everything. So they need to tell you in advance. What I learned, I think that people want low-key conversations on Clubhouse. They are not after a whole talk and speech as such, or seminar or webinars, like we do a lot as scholars. And I think for me, I wrote in my bio really clearly that I am a media scholar, but most talks I've hosted, I was not interested in sort of analyzing it or doing research on it. So I was really clear on, I find this really interesting. Can I contact you afterwards? Maybe I can use some of this on a paper, or I was really transparent about that, because most people are afraid of, am I a private person on this app, or am I a scholar here? So I think it's really important. And also we had a long discussion about a journalist on the app, because people were like, okay, we can't say anything because now we have a journalist in the room. So I think it was really important for me and in my rooms and in my club to be really transparent about it, that I wasn't going to use this as my research, but I was interested in maybe following up some of the questions that came up on the talks. And I think also that post-pandemic Clubhouse is competing with other audio platforms such as Spotify, Green Room, etc. And the hype is definitely over, but I think that we will see more of audio apps in the future. So maybe the hype with Clubhouse is over. Maybe other apps will gain more interest. I don't know what the future will bring, but I think that we have to move to more audio apps in the future. And I think it's a great place to both do dissemination and science communication, but you really need to, like Jan said, you really need to tailor to the different kinds of apps. And finally, this is my contact bio. If you want to stay in touch, just hit me with a DM, send me an email, or follow me on LinkedIn. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Catherine. A nice overview of a new app, and I think the concept of a room fits quite well into the academic thinking, because seminars and symposia are always organized in a space, in a room, in the form of panel discussions anyway. So this is also very inspiring, I guess. Do you have any questions is my question now. We are running out of time, but if you have any, we can.
I can't see anything, so just please just
yes. In the
raise your
chat
hand.
box, there are no questions, but you can also raise your hand. If not, you can of course also contact Catherine afterwards, as you can see, and we'll collect all the material to the web page anyway. I guess a lot of learning about new apps occurs by just going into that app and exploring its functions and trying out how does it work, how does it suit to my purposes. Just try it out, and then if you have any questions, you have an expert here to contact afterwards.
Yes, and I have to tell that I'm far more active on Instagram than Clubhouse right now. But if you have any questions, just ask, and I'll be happy to help. And as you said very correctly, I mean, you can try it. I mean, it's not the end of the world that you don't get any likes or you don't get a lot of followers overnight. I think for me, it's basically, if I just reach out to 10 people and or even 5 people, they tell me, oh, this was really interesting. I hope this was curriculum in my school or in my university. Thank you so much. And thanks for the great tips. I mean, for me, that's enough. So yeah, my best learning experience is definitely just try and just see what happens. And I had no idea that the climate club would gain such popularity. I think maybe people were just hungry for scientific and low-key communication and conversation. So I think I was just lucky with the timing, basically.
Yeah, as you said, there are not that many Scandinavian groups. I have found some international scholarly or academic writing groups. So that might also be one idea to use it for common writing retreats, or sharing the writing time together, and then discussing one's projects or something. And Carlos says that it might be a good addition to the existing platforms. And I think we agree. And now it's time to sum up. We thank you, Catherine.
Thank you so much.
We wanted all the presentations to be concise, but we also see that there should be more room for discussions. When sharing experiences, it's always good to hear how are you dealing with this specific platform, and sharing these sets of advice and experiences. It's a very time-consuming thing, I think, but it's worth it. I'm glad that the focus has not been too much on the technical aspects today. The technology or the technical aspects, that's also a very important question, how to start in practice, how to master an app or a platform, and you need training. But that's maybe something that's beyond these kinds of webinars. So I hope you have found some answers to the questions that are puzzling you in your social media use and your strategies at the moment. It's a never-ending process. And if you have any topics you would like to get more training in, or if there are some reflections, please let us know, because we could think of focusing in our next webinar series on, for example, writing tools or academic virtual communities, or any kind of online phenomena that are relevant to us researchers in scientific communication. If no one wants to take the final word here, there are thank yous in the chat box. So I also want to thank you for joining us today. And we are, as said, eager to develop this format forward, where we can share our practical experiences. So please keep in contact with us. If you like the format, please let us know. And thank you especially for Mia from Nordicom for preparing the program today. And thank you for you who shared your experiences. Thank you for you who listened. All the material will be found on the webpage, including the recording. Thank you and have a nice day.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.